On the third day of March, 1931, along West 131st Street in Harlem, the Klan crossed a boundary they shouldn't have. They publicly hanged someone from Bumpy Johnson's own bloodline. When darkness fell, Harlem became silent, not from being afraid, but from waiting. This wasn't about getting even or protecting pride. It was methodical planning. A single individual selected patience when facing down an organization built on terror. So how exactly did Bumpy make it through a public degradation designed specifically to destroy him? To grasp the meaning behind that silence, we need to go back to that very first hour. March 3rd, 1931, West 131st Street, 11 o'clock in the morning. The corpse was suspended from a street lamp right outside Monroe's grocery. White rope, perfect knot. William Johnson, Bumpy's cousin, deceased for less than 60 minutes. The Klan never made errors. They issued declarations. This killing wasn't simply murder. This was a photograph waiting to be captured, a deliberate provocation engineered to trigger an explosion in Harlem so authorities could rationalize crushing it completely. Coffee grew cold sitting on countertops. Newspapers slipped from people's fingers. A woman let out one scream, then fell silent. The wind swept down that street, cold and biting. It moved through the brownstone steps, carrying fear along with it. Within 60 minutes, everyone throughout Harlem had heard. Within 120 minutes, everyone was watching to see Bumpy Johnson's response. Theodore Green entered Bumpy's office right at noon. He didn't bother knocking, simply pushed the door open. "Where?" Bumpy asked. 131st. Right outside Monroe's. They displayed him for the entire neighborhood to witness. Bumpy walked over to the window, gazed down at the street below. His hands remained at his sides. "Get everyone off those streets. Shut down the numbers, operations early. Send folks home. I don't want groups of more than 3 people anywhere throughout Harlem." Green just stared. "They just publicly hanged your cousin and you're asking us to stay quiet." "I'm asking us to be intelligent." Bumpy's voice stayed level. "The Klan didn't do this just to kill William. They did it to force our reaction. They're hoping for guns flooding the streets. They want full riots. They want sensational headlines and justification to deploy the National Guard into Harlem. If we hand them that, we lose absolutely everything. So we just do nothing?" "I didn't say that." Bumpy's jaw muscles tightened. "Inform the boys. No visible weapons allowed. No congregating anywhere. No loud conversations. If anyone asks questions, we're in mourning. We're peaceful." Green turned to leave. Bumpy stopped him. "And Theodore, find out who was standing on that corner when this happened. Who witnessed the car arriving? Who saw actual faces? Handle it quietly." By 2 o'clock that afternoon, Harlem had transformed. Numbers, spots closed ahead of schedule. Men who typically occupied street corners dispersed. The streets went quiet in a way that felt fundamentally wrong, like holding your breath underwater. A young dealer named Marcus arrived at Bumpy's office. "Boss, the boys keep asking what we're doing. They want to know if we're hitting back. Tell them to keep their mouths shut and wait." "Wait for what exactly?" "For me to tell them something different." Bumpy poured himself a glass of bourbon but left it untouched. "You think this is just about my cousin? This is about making us appear like animals so they can justify treating us like animals. We start shooting, we prove their point exactly. And if we do nothing, we look weak. We're not doing nothing. We're doing something they won't see coming because they assume we're too stupid to plan beyond tomorrow." Bumpy turned away from the window. "Get out! Tell everyone to maintain calm. Tell them I'm the one saying so." Marcus departed. The phonograph played Duke Ellington at low volume. The bourbon sat there untouched. Bumpy stared at nothing in particular and calculated his next moves. 6 o'clock that evening. Back room of a shuttered barber shop. Green was there. Marcus. Cases from the docks. 4 additional men. They sat waiting. "They're expecting us to come at them hard and stupid," Bumpy said. "They're expecting revenge. They're expecting us to hand them everything they need to justify bringing absolute hell down on this entire neighborhood." Cases leaned forward. "So, What the hell are we actually doing? Give me 7 days. Silence filled the room. 7 days for what? Marcus asked. 7 days to demonstrate what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Bumpy looked at each man individually. Nobody makes a move without my explicit word. Nobody retaliates. Nobody says the wrong thing in the wrong establishment. We let them believe they won. And then we remind them that worse things exist than bullets. Green spoke quietly. You certain about this? 7 days is considerable time. People are angry right now. People want action immediately. Then they can wait 7 additional days to get it. Anyone who can't wait, anyone who believes they know better, tell them to come see me directly. I'll explain it to them personally. Bumpy's voice dropped lower, and if they still don't understand after that, I'll make certain they never forget the lesson. The men departed one at a time, spreading across Harlem, carrying the message. 7 days. That number moved through the neighborhood like spreading fever, whispered inside pool halls, passed around in churches, repeated in back rooms where men played cards and planned conflicts. A bartender asked Marcus what those 7 days actually meant. Marcus simply shook his head. It means Bumpy has formulated a plan, and when Bumpy has a plan, you shut up and wait. By midnight, Harlem understood completely. This wasn't surrender happening. This was something much colder. The Klan had hung a man to provoke absolute chaos. Bumpy Johnson had responded with total silence, and silence from a man like that wasn't weakness at all. It was the sound a trap makes right before it closes shut. The city went to sleep, still waiting. The Klan went to sleep, thinking they'd achieved victory, and Bumpy sat in his office counting down from 7 and planning something that wouldn't require a single gunshot but would cut far deeper than any blade ever could. Day 1, March 4th. Everyone expected gunfire. The newspapers positioned reporters on every corner throughout Harlem, waiting for the riot to begin. Police doubled their patrols. The mayor convened emergency meetings. White folks in Manhattan locked their doors tight and discussed how the entire city was going to burn. But Harlem woke up quiet. Stores opened right on schedule. People went to work as usual. Children walked to school like any other day. If you didn't know about the rope, if you didn't know about William Johnson swinging there yesterday, you might think it was just another Wednesday. That's what made it absolutely terrifying. The city held its breath, anticipating violence. Harlem breathed normally, like nothing had occurred. The rope came down at 4:40 that afternoon. City workers arrived with a ladder and wire cutters. No ceremony performed, no photographs taken. They cut it down, loaded the body into a truck, and departed. By 5 o'clock, the only remaining evidence was a scuff mark on that lamppost and a feeling lingering in the air like waiting for thunder to strike. Bumpy met Theodore Green in the back of a laundromat on Lenox. The machines were running loud. Nobody could hear them over all that noise. Step 1. I need to know who witnessed what yesterday morning. Who was standing on that street? Who was looking out their window? Who saw the car arrive? Who saw actual faces? Green pulled out a small notebook. Mrs. Patterson was hanging laundry outside. She saw a black Ford. 3 men wearing white hoods, gone within 5 minutes. License plates? No, but one of them was limping. Bad left leg. Good. Keep asking around. Quietly. Just friendly conversations. Don't let anyone realize we're building a list. What's step 2? Step 2 is we shut down the loudmouths immediately. Anyone talking about revenge, anyone suggesting we should burn crosses or shoot up white neighborhoods, you find them. You explain that silence isn't optional. Green smiled slightly. How hard do I explain? Hard enough they understand perfectly, but not so hard they need a hospital visit. We can't afford the attention. Break a finger if necessary. Just make certain they shut up. Step 3 was controlling the noise. Bumpy sent word through every bar, church, barbershop, and pool hall. No public displays of anger, no gatherings, no speeches, no marches. Harlem was going to act like it absorbed the hit and moved forward. The Klan wanted chaos. Harlem was giving them absolutely nothing. Step 4 was the crucial one. Bumpy gathered his top people in a basement on 135th Street. Marcus, Cases, a woman named Della who ran operations, 6 others who understood how things truly worked. "We're not going after people directly," Bumpy said. "We're going after function, deliveries, services, the small details that keep this city running. We apply pressure so softly they won't know where it's coming from." Della leaned forward. "What kind of pressure exactly?" "The kind that costs money. The kind that makes them wonder if maybe they selected the wrong neighborhood to mess with. But nothing loud, nothing obvious, nothing they can directly point to. Everything looks like bad luck or simple incompetence." Marcus asked what everyone was thinking. "And if they come back? If they hang someone else?" Bumpy's jaw tightened. "Then we adjust accordingly. But right now, we stick to the plan. 7 days. They want us to be animals. We show them we're smarter." A younger man named Lewis spoke up. "This feels like we're doing nothing at all. People want action." "Then people are being stupid." Bumpy turned to face him directly. "Action is exactly what they want us to take. Action gets us killed or arrested or gives them justification to burn Harlem straight to the ground. What I'm giving you is something superior. I'm giving you a method to win without them even knowing we're fighting. And if it doesn't work, then you can have your action. But you get it on day 8, not day 1. Clear?" Lewis nodded. Everyone nodded in agreement. They departed one at a time through different exits. The number moved through Harlem like spreading fever. No written letters, no announcements. Just the number 7 passed from person to person in conversations that appeared casual but carried substantial weight. A bartender told a regular customer. "Bumpy says, 7 days, so we wait." The regular told his brother. His brother told his pastor. The pastor mentioned it to his congregation without revealing where he heard it. In a barber shop on 142nd, a man asked, "When the hell are we going to do something?" The barber stopped cutting, looked at him through the mirror. 7 days. That's what I heard. 7 days for what? For whatever Bumpy has planned. And if you're smart, you'll shut your mouth and wait like everyone else. The man shut his mouth. By nightfall, the entire neighborhood had synchronized. Not because anyone forced them, simply because Bumpy Johnson asked for 7 days. And in Harlem, when Bumpy asked for something, you provided it or you discovered what happened to people who didn't. The police noticed the quiet. It made them extremely nervous. They were prepared for riots, had tear gas and batons, and orders to crack skulls. What they weren't prepared for was business as usual. Detective Sullivan walked into a bar on Lenox, asked questions, received polite answers that told him absolutely nothing. "Anyone here upset about yesterday?" The bartender wiped the counter clean. "Everyone's upset, officer, but being upset and doing something stupid are 2 different things." "So nobody's planning anything?" "Planning what? We're trying to live our lives. You want a drink or just here to ask dumb questions?" Sullivan left empty-handed, reported back that Harlem was quiet, too quiet. His captain told him to keep watching. Something was coming. But that's exactly what Harlem appeared to be doing. Moving forward. Except everyone who lived there knew the actual truth. This wasn't acceptance. This was the sound before a strike. This was Bumpy Johnson counting down from 7 and building something the Klan wouldn't see until it wrapped around their throats. A young dealer named Ray approached Marcus in an alley. "This 7-day thing. People are getting restless. They want to know what we're waiting for." Marcus grabbed him by the collar, slammed him against the brick wall. "You want to know? Go ask Bumpy yourself. See how that conversation goes. Or you can shut up and trust that the man who built this entire operation knows what the hell he's doing." Ray nodded quickly. Marcus released him. The city adjusted itself. Waiters served tables, drivers drove routes, mothers put children to bed, and underneath it all, invisible as electric current, the message kept spreading. 7 days. Wait 7 days. Then we see what power looks like when it doesn't need to announce itself with ropes and fire. March 5th. The Klan was waiting. They had completed their part, hung a man publicly, made their statement clear. Now they needed Harlem to complete its part. They needed gunshots. They needed riots. They needed something loud and stupid that would justify bringing in the cavalry and transforming the neighborhood into military occupation. But the gunshots never came. Harlem stayed quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you check over your shoulder because silence from dangerous people is worse than noise. The Klan had reporters ready and positioned. They had photographers stationed. They had planned the entire sequence: provocation, reaction, retaliation, triumph, except Harlem refused to play its assigned role. The script called for chaos, and Harlem gave them nothing except ordinary life continuing like clockwork. Day 3, March 6th. Still nothing. No marches, no protests, no firebombs through windows. The Klan had poked a beehive, and the bees just went about making honey like nothing occurred. It didn't make sense. It violated every assumption they held about how these people operated. A Klan organizer named Dutch Miller sat in a diner on the edge of Harlem drinking coffee that tasted like dirt. His partner, a man everyone called Burr because he was tall and white and useless, leaned across the table. "They're not doing anything," Burr said. 2 days, nothing. Maybe they're scared. Or maybe they're planning something we can't see. Burr looked out the window. "I don't like this silence from people like that. That's not fear. That's something else entirely." Dutch waved him off. "What the hell can they do? They're colored. They don't have power. They don't have organization. They're just scared and trying to figure out how to keep breathing, if you say so." But Burr was right to be nervous. Harlem wasn't scared. Harlem was synchronized. And synchronized people moving with purpose are more dangerous than angry people moving without a plan. Bumpy's plan rolled out slowly and invisibly. It started with deliveries. A trucking company that supplied meat to restaurants in Lower Manhattan started experiencing problems. Trucks broke down. Drivers called in sick. Routes got confused. Deliveries that were supposed to arrive Tuesday morning showed up Thursday afternoon with spoiled merchandise. The owner called his dispatcher. "What the hell is going on? We're losing contracts." The dispatcher shrugged. "Bad luck, I guess. Everything that can go wrong is going wrong." What the owner didn't know was that 3 of his drivers worked routes through Harlem and accepted side money from Bumpy's organization. What the dispatcher didn't know was that his assistant had a brother who owed Bumpy a favor and was making certain paperwork got filed incorrectly. Invoices disappeared. A printing company that handled Klan recruitment materials found that their orders kept getting delayed. The ink smelled wrong, came out blurry. The printer called his supplier. "This batch is garbage. Send me new ink." "We sent you new ink last week." "We'll send it again. But this isn't working." The supplier didn't know that someone was adding a few drops of solvent to every shipment going to that address. Just enough to make the ink separate, just enough to turn every print job into a blurry mess. A freight elevator in a building that housed several Klan-friendly businesses started malfunctioning. It would work fine for an hour, then stop between floors. Trap whoever was inside for 30 minutes before lurching back to life. The building manager called a repair company. "I need this fixed today. People are complaining." The repairman came out, looked at the machinery, sucked his teeth. "This is going to take parts I don't have. Maybe 3 days." 3 days? What am I supposed to tell the tenants? Tell them to take the stairs. What the building manager didn't know was that the repairman's cousin worked in Harlem and had been given very specific instructions about which elevators needed to develop problems and which ones should keep working fine. In a barber shop on 142nd Street, the scissors moved slower than usual. A white customer who had been coming there for years because the barber was cheap and skilled noticed. "You all right? You seem off today." The barber nodded. "Just tired. Long week." But he wasn't tired. He was following instructions. Every white customer who came through that door received service that was just slow enough to be annoying, but not slow enough to complain about. 15 minutes turned into 25. 25 turned into 40. Eventually, they stopped coming, found other barbers. The shop lost money, but the barber didn't complain because Bumpy's people made certain he didn't go hungry. These weren't attacks. These were inconveniences. Small, subtle. The kind of thing that made you think you were just experiencing bad luck. But when bad luck happens to a dozen different businesses, all connected to the same organization, eventually someone starts to wonder if maybe luck has nothing to do with it. The police increased patrols, twice as many cops, walking twice as many streets. They stopped people, asked questions, searched bags, looked for anything that could justify an arrest. Detective Sullivan stopped a man carrying a toolbox on Lenox Avenue. What's in the box? Tools. What kind of tools? The kind I use for work. I'm a plumber. Sullivan opened the box, saw wrenches, saw pipe fittings, saw exactly what you would expect a plumber to carry. Where are you working? Building on 133rd. Fixing a boiler. You got paperwork? The man pulled out a work order. Sullivan read it. Legitimate. He handed it back. Go ahead. This happened 50 times a day. 100 times. The police searched and questioned and hassled and found nothing because there was nothing to find. Nobody was carrying guns. Nobody was carrying explosives. Nobody was doing anything that looked remotely illegal. A beat cop named O'Reilly walked into a pool hall, looked around, saw men playing pool, saw men drinking beer, saw nothing that gave him a reason to bust heads. Anyone here know anything about what happened on 131st Street? Nobody answered. They just kept playing, kept drinking. O'Reilly walked the room, got close to a man lining up a shot. I'm talking to you. The man looked up. And I'm playing pool. You got a warrant or a reason to be bothering me? I got a badge. That's all the reason I need. Then use it or get out of my way. You're blocking my shot. O'Reilly wanted to hit him, wanted to drag him outside and teach him about respect, but there were 20 other men in that pool hall, and they were all watching, all waiting. O'Reilly was outnumbered and outgunned even though nobody had drawn a weapon. He backed down, left the pool hall, reported back that Harlem was uncooperative but quiet. His sergeant was frustrated. We have 50 cops in that neighborhood and nobody has made a single arrest related to the lynching. Nobody's talking. We ask questions. We get silence. We search people. We find nothing. It's like the whole damn neighborhood decided to stop existing. People don't just stop existing. Well, that's what it feels like. We're everywhere and we might as well be invisible. They see us. They just don't care. Harlem was becoming administratively invisible. No witnesses, no cooperation, no information. The police were present, but powerless. They could patrol the streets, but they couldn't patrol the silence. They could search bags, but they couldn't search minds. And Bumpy's clan lived in minds and moved through whispers and operated in spaces where badges meant nothing. By the end of day 3, the clan was getting nervous. The police were getting frustrated, and Harlem was continuing to function exactly as Bumpy Johnson had designed it. Quiet, controlled, synchronized, like a machine that looked broken but was actually working perfectly toward a goal nobody outside could see. The city was waiting for an explosion. What it received instead was pressure, invisible, constant, the kind that builds slowly until something important cracks and nobody can figure out exactly when or why it happened. Money stopped moving the way it was supposed to. Not all money. Just specific money going to specific people in specific places. A payroll clerk at a construction company that employed known Klan members sat at her desk sorting envelopes. She had been doing this job for 6 years. Same routine every Friday. Count the cash, seal the envelopes, put them in the box for distribution. Except this Friday, 3 envelopes went into her purse instead of the box. She walked out at 5 o'clock, took the subway home, met a man in a diner who gave her $200 for the 3 envelopes and told her to do it again next week. The construction workers showed up Monday expecting their pay, got nothing. The foreman called the office. "Where is the money? My guys are ready to walk." "I don't know. The envelopes were sealed. They should have been there." "Well, they weren't there. So figure it out or I'm coming down there myself." The office figured nothing out. The money was gone. Vanished somewhere between the desk and the job site. Nobody could explain it. Nobody could find it. The workers got paid 3 days late and half of them quit anyway because trust is hard to rebuild once it breaks. Insurance policies started lapsing. A man named Eugene Carter owned a print shop that produced Klan literature. He paid his premiums on time every month for 8 years. Then one month the payment didn't go through. He called the insurance company. "I sent the check 2 weeks ago. Why is my policy suspended?" "We have no record of receiving payment, Mr. Carter." "That's impossible. I have the carbon copy right here." "Then perhaps it was lost in the mail. You'll need to send another payment plus a reinstatement fee." "How much?" $50. Eugene sent the money. The policy was reinstated. Next month, same problem. Payment lost. Policy suspended. It happened 3 months in a row until Eugene switched insurance companies and discovered the new company had the same problems. He never connected it to the check-cashing service his secretary used, the one owned by a man who owed Bumpy Johnson a favor and was happy to make certain checks disappear for the right price. Electrical problems started plaguing businesses in specific buildings. Lights flickered, circuits blew, air conditioning stopped working in the middle of summer planning meetings. A Klan meeting hall on the west side lost power twice in 1 week. The owner called an electrician. "I need this fixed. We have an event tonight." The electrician showed up, looked at the breaker box, sucked his teeth. "This is going to take time. I need to order parts." "How long?" 3 days, maybe 4. "I need it done today." "Then you need a different electrician." "I can only work as fast as the parts arrive." The owner called 3 other electricians. Got the same answer. Parts were delayed. Supply chain issues. Bad luck. The meeting happened in the dark with flashlights, and everyone went home early because you can't plan a race war when you can't see the map. None of these were attacks. None of them were violent. They were just small failures in systems that were supposed to work. But when failures stack up, when money doesn't arrive and insurance doesn't cover and electricity doesn't flow, people start to feel like the ground underneath them isn't as solid as they thought. Bumpy met with his people every night in different locations. Never the same place twice, never more than 6 people at a time. They reported progress. He adjusted tactics. He kept the pressure steady. Theodore Green asked the question that was on everyone's mind. How long do we keep this up? People are getting anxious. They want to see blood. Blood comes later, if it comes at all. Bumpy lit a cigarette. Right now, we're doing something better. We're making them doubt, making them wonder if they can trust the systems they rely on. Every time a check doesn't arrive, every time a service fails, they lose a little bit of confidence. And confidence is what keeps people organized. Marcus spoke up. What if they figure out it's us? They won't figure it out because we're not doing anything they can point to. We're not killing anyone. We're not burning buildings. We're not kidnapping their children. We're just letting the machinery break down in ways that look like incompetence or bad luck. How do you prove that? You can't. Exactly. And that's what makes this work. They can't fight what they can't see. They can't retaliate against bad luck. Bumpy tapped ash into a tray. We keep the rhythm steady. No escalation. No getting greedy. Just consistent pressure until they understand that messing with Harlem has a cost they didn't anticipate. Della asked about risk. What if someone talks? What if one of our people gets picked up by the cops and decides saving their own skin is worth more than keeping quiet? Then we have a problem. But we chose people who understand what happens when you talk. We chose people who know that betraying this operation means there's nowhere in this city they can hide. Bumpy looked around the room. Anyone here worried about someone specific? Nobody answered. The silence meant either everyone was solid or everyone was too scared to admit doubt. Either way, the operation continued. Day 5, March 8th. Dutch Miller sat in a bar downtown with 3 other Klan organizers. They were supposed to be celebrating. They had made their statement, hung a man publicly, showed Harlem who had the real power, except nothing felt like victory. What the hell is going on? Burr said. We hit them hard. They should be rioting or running scared. Instead, it's like nothing happened. Another man, thick neck and thicker skull, leaned forward. Maybe they're planning something big. Maybe they're waiting for the right moment. Or maybe they're just too scared to do anything, Dutch said. But he didn't believe it. He had been watching Harlem for 5 days. The quiet was wrong. Too organized, too controlled. I'm telling you something is off. My paycheck was late. My landlord is saying the rent check never arrived even though I mailed it. My car broke down twice this week. Little things, but they keep adding up. That's just life. Stuff happens. Not this much stuff. Not all at once. Burr finished his drink. I think they're doing something we can't see. I think this is a response and we just don't recognize it yet. Dutch laughed. What are they going to do? Make our lives inconvenient? Oh no, how terrifying. A delayed paycheck and a broken car. That's not war. That's just Wednesday. But Burr was right. The Klan had wanted fear. They had wanted Harlem to cower or explode. What they got instead was uncertainty. And uncertainty is worse than fear, because you can't fight it. You can't shoot it. You can't burn a cross in its yard and make it go away. Fear tells you where the enemy is. Uncertainty makes you wonder if the enemy is everywhere or nowhere. Fear makes you react. Uncertainty makes you hesitate. And in that hesitation, in that moment of doubt, control shifts from the people who provoked to the people who refuse to be provoked. By the end of day 5, the Klan was starting to feel something they had never felt before when dealing with Harlem. Not fear, not respect. Just the uncomfortable sense that maybe they had kicked something they should have left alone, that maybe the silence wasn't weakness but strategy, that maybe Bumpy Johnson understood power in ways they didn't. One of the organizers, a man named Pike, said it out loud. What if we made a mistake? What if we started something we don't know how to finish? Dutch slammed his glass down. We didn't make a mistake. We sent a message. They got the message. And if they're too stupid or too scared to respond, that just proves we were right about them all along. But the words sounded hollow. Because deep down, Dutch was starting to wonder the same thing Pike had said out loud. They had hung a man expecting chaos. They got silence. They had provoked a reaction expecting violence. They got inconvenience. And somewhere in that gap between expectation and reality, the Klan was beginning to understand that they had entered a fight they didn't know the rules to. Bumpy Johnson was teaching them a lesson, not with bullets, not with fire, with patience and precision, and the understanding that real power doesn't announce itself with spectacle. Real power moves quietly and strikes where you don't expect it and leaves you wondering what just happened long after the damage is done. 2 more days. Then the lesson would be complete, and the Klan would learn what every other organization that challenged Harlem had learned before them. You can win a battle with violence, but you win a war by making your enemy doubt whether fighting you was worth it in the first place. The equation was simple. 1 gunshot, and everything collapsed. Bumpy's strategy would fail. The police would have their excuse. The Klan would have their justification. Harlem would burn and everyone would say they had it coming. But if the silence held, if Harlem made it through 2 more days without breaking, then something fundamental would shift. Power would change hands without a single shot fired. The question was whether an entire neighborhood could hold its breath long enough to prove a point nobody had ever proven before. Bumpy sat in his office watching the street below, the same street where William Johnson had hung 6 days ago. The same street that had seen 1,000 injustices and swallowed them all without fighting back, because fighting back meant dying. But this time was different. This time, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Theodore Green walked in. The boys are getting restless. 2 more days feels like forever when you're sitting on your hands. Then tell them to sit harder. Bumpy didn't turn from the window. We're almost there. Almost through. If someone messes this up now because they couldn't control themselves for 48 more hours, I'll personally break every bone in their hand and make them watch. They know. But knowing and doing are different things. Then make them the same. I don't care how. But nobody moves. Nobody speaks out of turn. Nobody gives the Klan or the cops or anyone else a reason to come down on us. Bumpy finally turned. You understand what's at stake here? This isn't about my cousin anymore. This is about proving that we're not what they think we are, that we're capable of discipline and strategy and patience, things they don't believe people like us can do. Green nodded. I'll keep them in line. You better. Because if this falls apart now, it'll be worse than if we had just burned the city down on day one. At least then, we would have gone down fighting instead of looking like we tried to be smart and failed. Day 7, March 10th, the last day. The city was holding its breath along with Harlem, everyone waiting to see if the fuse would finally catch fire or if the whole thing would just fizzle out into nothing. The churches stayed open, but the sermons were quiet. Pastors spoke about patience and discipline and the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Nobody mentioned the lynching directly. Nobody had to. Everyone knew what the sermons were really about. In a church on 138th Street, the pews were full, but the air was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you wonder if spring will ever come. The pastor spoke in measured tones. No fire, no brimstone, just calm words about endurance. Sometimes the hardest thing is to do nothing, to wait when every part of you wants to act. But there's strength in patience. There's power in restraint. The world expects us to be one thing. We become powerful when we prove we can be something else. People nodded. Nobody clapped. Nobody shouted amen. They just sat and listened and let the words settle like snow. On stoops and street corners, men sat with cold coffee and cigarettes. They didn't gather in groups, 2 or 3 at most, enough to keep each other company, but not enough to look like a threat. They talked about weather, about work, about nothing important. The important things stayed locked behind their teeth. A young man named Tommy sat on a stoop with an older man named Curtis. Tommy was 22 and angry. Curtis was 50 and tired. They had been sitting there for an hour without saying much. "This is nonsense," Tommy finally said. "We should be doing something." Curtis didn't look at him. "We are doing something. We're waiting. Waiting is not doing anything. You're wrong about that. Waiting is the hardest thing there is when you're angry. But it's what Bumpy asked for. So we wait." Curtis lit a new cigarette from the old one. "You want to go off and do something stupid? You go ahead. But you do it alone. And when the cops come for you, when they drag you to jail and use you as an excuse to crack 100 other heads, you remember I told you to sit still." Tommy stayed on the stoop. The coffee went cold. The sun moved across the sky. Nothing happened because nothing was allowed to happen. By the evening of day 7, people on both sides were exhausted from tension. The Klan had expected a war. They got a standoff. The police had expected riots. They got compliance that felt more threatening than resistance. And Harlem had held together through 7 days of provocation without giving anyone the satisfaction of seeing them break. Nobody made a public announcement. Nobody called a truce. But somewhere in the hours between dusk and dark, an understanding formed. Silent, unspoken, built on the shared realization that continuing this game would cost more than anyone wanted to pay. Dutch Miller sat in his apartment alone with a bottle of whiskey that was half empty. He stared at the phone, thought about calling Pike or Burr or any of the others to plan the next move. But what would that move be? They had already hung a man, already made their statement. If Harlem wouldn't react to that, what else was there? He picked up the phone, put it down, picked it up again. His hand shook slightly, not from fear, from uncertainty, from the uncomfortable knowledge that they had started something they didn't know how to finish. And walking away felt like losing, but pressing forward felt like stepping into a trap. The phone stayed silent. Nobody called. The Klan didn't organize another action. They just let the days pass and told themselves they had made their point, even though deep down they knew the point had been made against them. In Harlem, people went to bed that night with the same feeling, relief mixed with tension, like walking away from a fight that could have killed you but didn't. Nobody celebrated. Nobody declared victory. They just breathed and waited for tomorrow to see if the peace would hold. Bumpy sat in his office past midnight, alone. The city outside his window was dark and quiet. 7 days. He had asked for 7 days and Harlem had given it to him. No shots fired, no riots, no chaos. Just disciplined silence that spoke louder than any violence could have. Theodore Green came in without knocking. "It's done. We made it through. We made it through today. Tomorrow might be different. You think they'll come back?" Bumpy shook his head. "I think they learned something this week. Maybe not the lesson I wanted to teach them, but they learned that Harlem isn't what they thought it was, that we can organize, that we can plan, that we can hit back without throwing a punch." He stood and walked to the window. And that uncertainty is worse than fear. That not knowing when or how we'll respond is more effective than any threat we could have made. So what happens now? Now we go back to normal. We let them think it's over. We let them believe they can relax. Bumpy turned from the window. And we remember. We remember every face that was on that corner, every name connected to that rope. And when the time is right, when they've forgotten to be careful, we remind them that patience isn't the same as forgiveness. Green smiled. "How long do we wait?" "As long as it takes. Could be a month, could be a year, but it'll come. And when it does, it'll be so quiet they won't even know we did it until long after it's done." The two men stood in silence for a moment. Then Green left. Bumpy stayed at the window, watching Harlem sleep. 7 days had changed something. Not everything, but enough. The Klan had wanted to break Harlem's spirit. Instead, they had given Bumpy Johnson a chance to prove that spirit and strategy weren't opposites. That discipline could be a weapon. That silence could be louder than screams. The rope was gone. The body was buried, but the lesson would last. And that lesson was simple. You don't win by being the loudest or the most violent. You win by making your enemy doubt whether fighting you was worth it in the first place. Rain came before dawn. Heavy, cold, the kind that washes everything clean. By the time the sun came up, West 131st Street looked like nothing had ever happened. No rope, no body, no crowd. Just wet pavement and people walking to work. The police files got stamped with red ink. No prosecutable leads. The bureaucratic way of saying we have nothing and nobody's talking. The file went into a cabinet. William Johnson became a case number that would never be solved. Detective Sullivan sat at his desk, staring at the closed file. His captain stood behind him. "That's it? We just let it go? What do you want us to do? No witnesses, no evidence, no cooperation. We spent a week in Harlem and got nothing because they're protecting someone." The captain shook his head. "The Klan did it. Everyone knows that. But proving it, getting someone to testify, it's not worth starting a war over." He walked away, closed the file, move on. Sullivan closed the file. But he kept thinking about the 7 days of silence, about how Bumpy Johnson had kept an entire neighborhood calm when it should have exploded. The Klan got nothing. They hung a man expecting riots, expecting chaos, expecting Harlem to prove every stereotype about black people being violent. Instead, they got disciplined silence that made them look weak. Their recruitment dropped. People started asking questions. If Harlem could take that hit and not break, maybe the Klan wasn't as powerful as they claimed. Maybe public lynching was bad strategy. Maybe it was just theater. Bumpy kept Harlem without firing a shot. He had faced down a terror organization using patience and coordination. He proved power didn't always mean violence. The police learned something too. They learned Harlem could organize, that it could operate as one when it needed to, that future operations would require cooperation, not just force. Your badge meant nothing if people chose silence. Theodore Green met with Bumpy in the same office where they started. "So what now?" "Now we remember." Bumpy poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Every name, every face, everyone connected to that rope. "And we wait. How long? Doesn't matter. Next month, next year, but when we move, it'll be quiet, precise, and nobody will connect it to this week." Green raised his glass. To patience, to strategy. The whiskey burned, but it felt right. Harlem went back to normal. Stores opened. Numbers runners made rounds. Jazz played in clubs. Life continued like the previous week never happened. But underneath, something had changed. The Klan learned that provoking Harlem came with costs, not bullets, just slow uncertainty, knowing consequences would come, but not knowing when. The police learned that force without cooperation was theater. 100 cops meant nothing if people decided you were the enemy. And Harlem learned about itself. It could organize. It could turn silence into a weapon. That lesson would echo for decades. The rope disappeared. The street returned to normal. But the choices people stopped making after that week lasted forever. The Klan stopped targeting Harlem directly. The police approached differently. And Harlem saw itself as a community that understood collective power. Real power doesn't come from violence. It comes from making people adjust their behavior without you saying a word. Real power is when enemies choose not to fight because they're not sure they can win and can't afford to find out. Real power is patience, turning into pressure, turning into victory so quiet nobody realizes they lost until after. Bumpy stood at his window watching rain clean the street where his cousin died. The stain was gone, washed away like it never happened. But Bumpy remembered he had taught the Klan a lesson, taught the police a lesson. But most important, he taught Harlem about itself, that dignity and strategy could coexist, that discipline wasn't weakness, that sometimes the hardest thing and the smartest thing were the same. The city moved on. But people who lived through that week never forgot being part of something bigger, part of a neighborhood that chose restraint over revenge and won without firing a shot. That was the new order. Not louder, not more violent, just smarter, more organized, more aware of its power. Anyone who thought Harlem was weak would learn what the Klan learned. That silence can be a trap, that patience can be a weapon, that people who know when to strike are more dangerous than people who strike all the time. The rain stopped, the sun came out, Harlem kept breathing, and somewhere in back rooms and quiet conversations, Bumpy Johnson was already planning the next move in a game the Klan didn't know they were still playing. This story is shared for historical insight and personal reflection, not to promote violence or illegal behavior. Thank you for watching until the end. These stories take weeks of research and writing to create. If this resonated with you, if you see the lesson Bumpy Johnson was teaching about accountability and education over violence, hit that subscribe button. Help us reach 1 million subscribers so we can keep telling stories that matter. Stories about power used wisely. Stories about consequences faced honestly. Stories about men who chose to change systems instead of just destroying enemies. Next video drops soon. Until then, remember, real power isn't what you can destroy. It's what you choose to build.